Hello and welcome back to the Overlooked in Appalachia podcast. My name is Gabriel Edmonds, your go-to source for health and safety in the region during the COVID-19 pandemic. This week, I zoomed up with some colleagues of mine from Southwest Virginia to discuss safety precautions taking place in their workplaces. Okay, so I'm joined now with Russ Williams and Caleb Richardson, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about some safety protocols at their work. So why don't we start with Russ? So why don't you give us a little introduction and where you've been working and maybe some of the safety protocols going on there.
Well, I'm Russ. I work in Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg area. I'm a cleaner for a cabin rental agency. And we haven't changed too much of our protocols because we really don't have to deal with anyone as cleaners. We just get in, clean, get out. We're most of the time by ourselves. We do clean a little bit heavier than we did before. There's a lot more bleach involved. And but besides that, we don't have to wear masks and stuff. We're considered contract workers because we work on our own. We have to pay taxes at tax time instead of having them taken out of our paycheck and stuff. So it's not a whole lot has changed besides how much we do have to clean to make sure that everything is clean and safe for those that are coming in to stay in the cabins.
So do you think since the pandemic has started and come and gone and come back again, it's like, has business been following that trend or has it stayed pretty steady?
At first, whenever the initial quarantines and things started, business dropped a lot because everybody was really scared. And then whenever the quarantine started getting lifted, they started doing a little bit more business, more people were renting. And then once even after things picked back up, business just kept picking back up. And by picking up, I mean cases went up and everything. But the business, I believe they said that they have made more. This was in like August or September. They had made more in total by August or September than they did all year last year. So it was all the people who had been in quarantine and, they had the stimulus checks that had come in. They had the extra money and a ton of people were booking cabins and they were able to rent them at a higher rate because there were so many people trying to rent.
Okay, cool. So we'll move on to Caleb for a minute. So Caleb, where are you working at, and maybe talk about some of the protocols they got going on over there?
I'm working at Tempur-Pedic. It's the mattress factory in Duffield, and we have safety guys. They walk around the plant. They make sure everybody's staying 6 feet apart. Make sure everybody's like sanitizing their hands and just making sure everybody's following those safety protocols. And I've seen a lot of plexiglass like dividers go up in a lot of workplaces to keep people that have to work close to each other. It's to keep them safe, and like the plastic draped curtains, I've seen a lot of those go up. And we're all required to wear masks at all times unless eating. And it hasn't really affected work too much, honestly. Like we still go about our work like we normally do. So it's not all that bad.
So I know during the initial quarantine, Tempur got shut down for a little bit, and then you guys started coming back to work. So since you've come back, do you feel like the workload's about the same as it has been since before the shutdown?
Actually, no, because the workload was crazy for, I'd say, about 2.5 months. We were working Monday through Saturday, 60 hours. And it was rough on a lot of people, especially those that had to work even longer than just 60 hours Monday through Saturday. Like it was rough on a lot of people, but like we're getting to where we are now, to where like we're going back to normal. Everything's kind of slowing down. We're caught up on all the orders. We're good.
Okay, cool. And I know in Virginia right now, the governor is thinking about doing a second quarantine on Southwest Virginia. Has there been any talk, temper about that?
There has been. It's just too soon to call because nobody really has any idea what's going on at the moment. So I personally don't know anything about being shut down again. I hope we don't, but if we do, I just hope it won't be for as long as the previous quarantine, which was like 2 months.
Okay. And we'll come back to Russ for a minute now. I know you had a little bit of scare with your health there for a minute and even got COVID tested, but that was negative, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I know going back into working, the pandemic's at the highest it's been in the country so far. And do you think that's going to affect the cabin rental business again, or do you expect them to stay about the same now?
I expect it to stay about the same now. Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg and Sevierville, they all have very strict protocols in place to keep everyone safe. Everyone has to wear a mask. They have the floor marked in a lot of places to stay 6 feet apart. And I think people feel a little bit safer about everything now in Pigeon Forge because of all the protocols that they have set up.
Then we went on to discuss the election process and the paths they chose to vote. So we're going to move on now to maybe the second round of questions is going into the election. So whole voting process is over now. So I just wanted to ask you guys about maybe which route you took for voting and maybe some of the safety protocols you saw going on there. And so start with you again, Russ. So how did you vote? Just
I voted early.
So you took early voting.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were there, what kind of safety protocols did you see going on there?
They had tape on the floor to keep everybody 6 feet apart while you're waiting in line. They had hand sanitizer everywhere, and the only close contact you had with anybody was whenever you first went in to, they told you, how to fill out your ballot and everything. And the person who checked you in was behind plexiglass and also wearing rubber gloves and a face mask. And I believe everyone that anyone had to have contact with was wearing gloves.
Okay. And what about you, Caleb? Did you do early voting as well?
I actually did it on election day. And
okay.
I went in there and they had the place markers on the floor where you should stand if there was a line. But when I went in, there was no line. So I went in and the ladies had little tables and they had the plexiglass divider, and I just handed them my license. They gave me my ballot. She told me how to fill it out. They did spray down the table that you like the
booths.
The little booths. Yeah. And
yeah, they did that when I went to.
They sprayed it down after every person. So I thought that was a little extra precautionary measure. But everybody had masks, gloves. Well, not everybody had gloves. Yeah. That was probably about the same.
So would you say you said like there was like virtually no line for you going day of? No. What about for early voting? Was that
there was a pretty big line. There was a lot of people there. It probably would have been safer to go on the day of.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of people being scared of big lines on election day coming out for early voting there. I know in Kingsport, the lines were out the doors until the final day of early voting. So I'd say it was probably about the same here in Kingsport. But I actually still technically have a Virginia address. So I got to vote in Virginia, and Virginia is doing, when I registered to vote, they were doing, you could do mail-in votings due to COVID health issues. So I actually got to do mail-in and voted back in September for me. I know a lot of states weren't doing that. Tennessee was not one that was doing that. And I kind of see the benefits of doing that, and also how that can be a really long process when it comes to actually counting votes too.
Yeah.
That's a big thing right now, is still waiting for votes to come in. And wondering if they're legitimate or not.
Even
Yeah,
after
there
the
were a
election's
lot
been called.
of yeah.
Technically, it has been.
Technically, yes.
But even we received mail-in ballots that we did not request. So
Oh, really?
yeah, I saw something. There was a woman from Wisconsin who received about 6 mail-in ballots that she never requested. They had her current name, like just first and last name. They had her first name and maiden name. They had her first, middle, and maiden name. One was her first, middle, and last name, and then one of them was a combination of all 4. Like she got one of every possible name she could have had, and then she went to vote the day of, and they told her that she had already voted, but she had never sent anything in, so she didn't get to vote. She had to fill out an affidavit, and she's trying to get things sorted out.
I also spoke with Kingsport resident Maddie Davidson to talk about the same subject, as things are quite different in Tennessee. Okay, so why don't you tell me who you are and where you're working, what you're doing there.
Okay, so I'm Maddie Davidson. I work at Rocky Top Vapor here in Kingsport, Tennessee. I'm a shift lead there, so I'm basically like an assistant manager type person.
Okay, so what precautions are you guys taking against the pandemic right now?
So we wear masks and gloves all day long. We clean surfaces, anything anybody would touch multiple times a day. Used to, before the pandemic, we would do like flavor testing, but we're not doing that anymore, obviously, because it's just not really safe to do so right now. And we're not really letting customers like handle things before it's bought. That way there's not a lot of cross-contamination going on.
Okay, so did you guys shut down during the beginning of the pandemic back in the spring?
We didn't really shut down. We did go to curbside only for a little while, where people would just call in their orders and we would, take payment over the phone, or if they wanted to pay cash, we would like get it when they got there and bring their change out.
Okay, so as of recently, there's been another surge in pandemic cases, and I know the governor of Virginia is looking again to possibly shut down Southwest Virginia.
Right.
And do you think maybe this surge and maybe a possible another quarantine could affect the business again?
I definitely think it's possible, We haven't heard anything really specific yet, but I think if something did happen, we would probably do curbside again like we were at the beginning.
Okay. So now we'll just move on to the election, and as we know, the election just now today got called.
Right.
And but I just want to talk about maybe the voting process. So how did you vote in the election?
So I did early voting. Actually, because of work, I didn't get to go until the very last day of early voting, but I went and did early voting on the last day that it was available.
Okay, so would you say it was pretty busy there for the last day?
Honestly, it wasn't too bad. The lines seemed really long, but everyone was really spaced out, so they had like stickers on the floor, indicating to stay 6 feet apart, and everybody was obeying that. So it seemed a lot longer than it was, but it moved pretty quickly. They had everything set up to where, nobody was really touching a lot of different things. Like they had different pens, and like they would hand you a different pen, and then you would put it in a bucket to be sanitized so that they could swap them out. So I think they were really doing the best they could to make sure everything was as clean as possible, as easy as possible for everybody. Right. And everybody was wearing masks, so that was good.
Cool. So I technically am a Virginia resident, so
right.
I got the chance to register for mail-in voting, and I did that. So when we look at the two different voting processes, we see that there are pros and cons to both. Like,
right.
It's Saturday, and we just now learned who won the election, and that's obviously a con of mail-in voting.
Well, yeah, it takes longer to count because, it's not electronic. They're not getting it immediately.
So I guess what I'm kind of asking you is, like, do you see in the future that this amount of mail-in voting might become more viable, or do you see it sticking to the in-person that it has been in the past?
I personally don't have a problem with mail-in voting if you have that option available. Of course, here in Tennessee, mail-in voting is a little bit harder because you have to have like a super valid excuse, like you're going to be out of the country or something. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I mean, yes, it takes longer, but, it is what it is.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Overlooked in Appalachia. I've been Gabriel Edmonds. See you next time.